Good morning and welcome to the MC2CM Days. This event is organized by the Mediterranean City-to-City Migration Project, which is funded by the European Union and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. You should know that this project is implemented by ICMPD in partnership with UCLG and UN Habitat. We are very pleased also to say that this event is organized with the co-patronage of the Committee of the Regions, of which numerous representatives will be with us today and over the next few days. As you can see online and here, this event takes place in a hybrid form, meaning that some of us are here at Blue Point, Brussels, and many more are following this on a number of platforms online. You can watch this event live on our LinkedIn page, on our Facebook page, and also in a dedicated Clevercast website. Being this a hybrid event, you are strongly encouraged to interact with us in a number of ways. You can go on Twitter and use the MC2CM Days hashtag for comments and questions, and also use directly the comment section of our LinkedIn and Facebook page. And of course, if you're watching these on Clevercast, you can watch these in your preferred language. You can choose between English, French, and Arabic. At the bottom of your page, you will see also a form where you'll be able to submit questions for our panelists later on. And we are ready to start. So we already have our moderator today, Julien Simon, head of the Mediterranean region at ICMPD. And I will kindly ask now the direction to start with the introductory video that kicks off the MC2CM Days. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you'll enjoy.
What we are saying is not that we need to change the link of citizenship from the national to the local. It's more complex than that. What we are arguing is that we need to ensure that we transform the sense of citizenship from right holders only to community developers.
When we talk about inclusion all the time, we believe that it should cover the three main components of inclusion: the social inclusion, the urban inclusion, and the economic inclusion.
Sur ces démarches, et tout pour les nouvelles personnes migrantes, nous, notre volonté, c'est de donner à ces personnes des pouvoirs de citoyennes et de citoyens, s'ils n'ont pas la nationalité. On met en place, nous, par exemple, des systèmes de démocratie participative, des systèmes de conseils citoyens indépendants, des systèmes de budget participatif, de votation citoyenne, auxquels tous les Grenoblois et toutes les Grenobloises de plus de 16 ans, quelle que soit leur nationalité, peuvent participer.
La question de la citoyenneté, le terme, il faudrait bien le clarifier, parce que la citoyenneté appelle la nationalité du pays. Nous avons changé, nous parlons d'habitants. Nous utilisons, dans la commune, on utilise le terme d'habitant. Comme ça, on dissipe cette croyance que ne peuvent bénéficier des services que les citoyens.
Peut-être autour de la création d'un pass mobilité citoyenneté qui permettrait à n'importe quel citoyen de villes qui émettent des migrants ou qui en accueillent ou qui en reçoivent ou qui sont en transition, peut-être de partager des projets communs entre ces villes destinataires de la migration ou émettrices et de réfléchir à cette solidarité entre territoires pour créer des citoyennetés qui se parlent, qui sont en dialogue.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this MC2CM Days here at Blue Points in Brussels and online. We are all adapting to the new technologies and new setups and new ways of doing things when it comes to dialogue, international cooperation, and exchanging among us. And that includes modernization, professionalization of the way we work, and that means also testing the way we are going to function with technology. Sometimes that creates, of course, some challenges, but I think it's a work in progress and a process that we are all heading into in any case. It is a real pleasure to be here this morning among you and online with our distinguished panelists. We have a large number of diverse interlocutors who will be coming into the discussions and bringing various point of views when it comes to the importance of renewing partnerships in the Mediterranean region, notably when it comes to migration governance, and most particularly with the focus of the MC2CM Days, the role of cities in this regard. We will have the pleasure to have interventions from high-level panelists, as I said, who will be looking into the way we are going to define this new era of cooperation, the spirit of renewed partnerships as called upon by the new agenda for the Mediterranean. Now, whether you call it renewed partnership, reimagined partnership, revitalized partnership, or as is the title of the forthcoming Vienna Migration Conference of ICMPD, reimagining migration partnerships, the idea behind it is very much of building a new era, a new shape of things to come when it comes to cooperating on this absolutely essential issue, that is migration governance, where no one can manage the challenges and seize the opportunities offered on his own. And in this regard, the MC2CM has very much put at the heart of our approach the idea that cities are essential partners in this regard and need to be fully incorporated in the various aspects of the policy development cycle related to migration. Key stakeholders have been redefining the way they approach things, ICMPD among them, with regard to cooperation, and we have decided in the Mediterranean to particularly focus on the idea of centering our approach to capacities. We will have different interventions in the opening remarks, representing by the Commissioner for the Director General. I've just been informed that my Director General, Michael Spindelegger, will be intervening first, and then we will have among the panelists in the opening remarks Commissioner Vareli, the EU Commissioner for Neighbourhood and Enlargement, the Secretary General of UCLG, our partner in the MC2CM, and Ms. Maimouna Mod Sharif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat. So without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to my Director General, Michael Spindelegger.
Thank you very much, Julia. Dear Secretary General Seitz, Director Mod Sharif, dear mayors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a great pleasure for me to open today's high-level dialogue on renewed partnerships and migration governance in the framework of the Mediterranean City-to-City Migration Initiative. At ICMPD, we feel very honored that this conference will bring together so many of our friends and partners in person, but also in a virtual format across countries and continents. Of course, I want to take the opportunity and thank our partners and donors, the European Union and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, United Cities and Local Governments, the United Nations Human Settlements Programme, UN Habitat, and the representatives of the 22 Euro-Mediterranean cities. Your continued support is the basis for the success of this initiative, and it will be the basis for the success of this conference. When the City-to-City Migration Initiative started in 2015, it wanted to respond to a basic fact. The fact that migration is an urban phenomenon. It is mostly at the local level, at the level of cities, where the reality of migration plays out and affects people's life, whether they are newly arrived migrants or long-term residents. Cities were always at the forefront in terms of the management of new arrivals, the furthering of immigrant integration, and the promotion of social cohesion between all resident populations. They always had to address immediate challenges. They had to respond quickly, and they had to deliver on the ground. We can conclude that cities were very successful in this respect. And I think we all agree that cities have gathered very specific know-how that has huge benefits for migration governance within countries, but also when it comes to international cooperation. The growing recognition of local authorities and cities as key actors in migration governance is one of the most important developments in recent years. This recognition is not only true in terms of national governments and regional frameworks, realizing that they cannot act successfully without the local level. It is also about cities recognizing and embracing their role as agents in migration governance. As one of the biggest political challenges of our time, migration is too complex and nuanced to be addressed by one nation, one ministry, or one city alone. All levels of governance have to work together. The local level has to play its part in a functioning migration governance system. Conversely, cities have to be acknowledged as a key player that migration governance relies upon. Local authorities are much more than just implementing partners of national migration policies. They also have the ability to contribute to shaping these migration policies. In order to benefit from this know-how and to make better migration policy a reality, we need enhanced dialogue and exchange between all political levels. And this is exactly what this conference will try to achieve. It will discuss issues related to the inclusion of migrants and refugees at the local level, their access to services and the link between local urban planning and the promotion of social coherence. It will look at private sector engagement and labor integration. Immigrants need jobs, and local labor markets need diversity of skills and knowledge to ensure their growth and prosperity. It will share experiences on promoting balanced migration narratives at the local level. Perceptions and attitudes towards newcomers are crucial for the success of all migration policies, but even more so in cities where local populations and migrants have to interact at a daily basis. And last but not least, it will look at the issue of gender and migration and discuss how cities can enhance the protection and inclusion of migrant women, spur gender-responsive programs, and develop policies that have migrant women as main beneficiaries. In all of this, the conference will draw upon best practices presented by the Mediterranean city-to-city partners and by a broad range of governmental, local, and non-governmental actors who have gathered extensive experience in the field. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last 1.5 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us once more of the deep links between all our societies, our economies, and our people. It has disrupted global mobility in ways that were unthinkable since the fall of the Iron Curtain. It has affected all of us, but it has affected migrants and their families even more. Millions of people got stranded, could not reach their place of residence, or had to return to their home countries while losing their jobs and income opportunities. At the same time, global displacement continued to grow, and the recent developments in Afghanistan remind us that the challenge will get even bigger in the months and years to come. As a result, migration governance will also become even more difficult than in the past. We will need all levels of governance to take part, to exchange, to learn, and to cooperate with each another. I'm convinced that the next days will make a very important contribution in this regard and provide equally important inputs to the further development of migration governance within the city-to-city framework and beyond. I wish you all very fruitful discussions and a successful conference. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spindelegger, for this intervention. I take very good note of particularly an element that you put forward, the fact that cities are much more than mere implementer of national policies, but they are part of the full cycle of migration policy development and crucial actors, crucial stakeholders in the overall migration governance system. In this regard, I think the new agenda for the Mediterranean will be an opportunity to further highlight this role and to further anchor the participation of cities into the overall migration governance and the renewing of partnerships between Europe and its southern neighborhood and partners. I will now give the floor to Commissioner Oliver Várhelyi for neighborhood and enlargement. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear Director Spindelegger. Thank you for inviting me to the high-level dialogue session of the Mediterranean city-to-city migration. It will be, of course, my pleasure to address with you the renewed partnerships and migration governments in the Mediterranean region and why local governments play a key role in this context. As you know, this European Commission considers its southern neighbors to be a strategic priority. We set a very clear and ambitious renewed strategy for this partnership. The new agenda for the Mediterranean signals a new beginning of our relations. It is based on common interests and common challenges. It demonstrates that Europe wants to contribute directly to a long-term vision of prosperity and stability of the region, especially in the socio-economic recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic and economic crisis. In close dialogue with our partners, we have identified a number of priority sectors, from creating growth and jobs, investing in human capital, or good governance. Our new agenda also pays particular attention to migration and considers migration to be a common challenge. We want to work together to fight irregular migration and break down the business model of the smugglers with our partners, as it is a major risk to all of us. To this end, our economic and investment plan for the Southern Neighbourhood includes a dedicated flagship project on migration. The new Neighbourhood and Development International Cooperation Instrument, financing all these actions, will deploy substantial amount of EU funding to address the various challenges of migration. We seek to bring real change on the ground for the benefit of both our neighbors and for Europe. Economy and migration are indeed among the most important challenges in this region, and they are closely interlinked. The improvement of living standards and education opportunities are therefore essential elements of our future cooperation, alongside enhancing border management capacity and improving the efficiency of returns and reintegration with a view to reducing irregular migration. This is what we have in mind while designing our future bilateral and regional actions in the area of migration, including a new regional multi-country program on migration. This program will allow us to continue the work done so far under the EU Trust Fund for North Africa. It will allow us to continue addressing migration with a whole of route approach, meaning, in other words, we are looking at different routes people use to migrate from wider perspective, studying the underlying patterns, emerging needs and profiles of people along the whole route from the countries of origin and transit. However, it also requires a whole of government approach, namely to work closely with partner countries and member states authorities at different levels with a view to address the full spectrum of challenges and opportunities related to migration. Cooperation with the local authorities will be an essential element to deliver this program. The host communities in this region are facing a whole range of different and diverse underlying situations and backgrounds. The trajectories of migrants consist of multiplied journeys going in very many directions. The traditional division among the countries of origin, transit, and destination becomes less and less evident. Just to give you an example, Tunis and Tangier, both considered as traditional centers of origin and transit of migration, are now becoming places of destination. In this context, cities in the region are becoming de facto managers of the various challenges of migration. Cities need to address issues around service provision, residence, settlement, and social cohesion, as well as urban security issues. The cities in the Southern Neighbourhood need to prepare both for migrants in transition as well as migrants for longer-term stay. To help cities addressing these challenges, we have provided funding for the Mediterranean City-to-City Migration Project since 2015. I'm pleased that the program helped to improve migration governance and sharing the best practices among very many number of cities in North Africa, the Middle East, and the EU. Going forward, it will be essential to continue this engagement, notably to support policy coherence and close cooperation between the local, regional, and national levels. To realize our new agenda for the Mediterranean, we are ready to provide a substantial investment in the region. Overall, we will seek to mobilize up to 7 billion euro for the period of 2021-2027, which would in turn help to mobilize private and public investments reaching up to 30 billion in the Southern Neighbourhood. We also call on member states and international financial partners to join us in our effort in the key sectors of interest, allowing us to pool our respective strengths much stronger. This strategic investment in the region will contribute to addressing the recovery, and in particular on creating people-centered policies for more resilient and inclusive societies. It should help to create the necessary conditions for migrants to stay, instead of taking a dangerous route to Europe. To conclude, let me underline that the new agenda for the Mediterranean is just the beginning of the process. Engagement with partners across the board will deepen over the coming months as we turn into reality and as we start to take joint actions. Exchanges and dialogue with our southern neighbors likely to deepen, and platforms that, like today, are becoming more and more important in the coming months. Thank you very much for your attention.
Commissioner Varelli, thank you very much for your intervention, and thank you for pointing out or detailing the width of and the ambition of the European approach with regard to migration within the framework of the new agenda for the Mediterranean, highlighting the fact that it's only the beginning and that working with all stakeholders will be crucial to undertake this holistic approach and ensure efficient migration governance in the region. Talking about cities and partners, you also mentioned the fact that the City-to-City was launched in 2015. Indeed, I was there at the time, but actually the discussions with regard to the program itself started a few years earlier, and I had the pleasure to visit Barcelona and our colleagues at UCLG at the time to discuss this idea that we had, this concept that we would build together with them and UN Habitat. It is therefore my pleasure to now give the floor to Emilia Says, the Secretary General of UCLG, to highlight the approach of cities and their engagement in the MC2CM. Emilia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity for us to dialogue and to meet in a very special context, this context of pandemic, but also a context of increasing challenges in climate emergency, also travel times for some parts of the world where many people are losing their rights and are moved to move and to contribute to this issue that we are discussing here today, human mobility, migration. It is a great pleasure for me to listen to the European Union Commissioner and his very wise words. I am also very pleased to greet my friend, the Director General of ICMPD. And of course, I am grateful also to for our partners of UN Habitat for joining these efforts. You have just said it, almost 10 years of collaboration, of discussion, of acting together, and a lot has changed in 10 years. And I am sure the mayors that are going to be taking the floor and the city representatives from Tunis, Irbid, Lampedusa, Sala, and Tripoli will be able to share how things have changed. They have changed and not always for the better. But allow me to start with some of the positive development that we have seen, both in the Director General introductory remarks and in the European Commissioner's introductory remarks. I have sensed also a shift in the importance and understanding that is being given to the role of local governments. And allow me to assure you that we have shifted this in 10 years. Our understanding, mutual understanding is much greater. And there is now a shared sense of how important it is to ensure that local governments get ready, that they have the competencies and the abilities. There is also a broad understanding about how thin the lines are around destination and arrival, and how this notion of citizenship and the right to move will need to evolve in the social concept around it, in our own communities, but also around national, regional, and international policy making. It will be very important to shape some of the concepts. If we all agree that we need to consider human mobility as a natural phenomenon, we will need to make an additional effort to change policy to make this possible. We will need to enhance the awareness raising in our communities. We will need to ensure that we protect human rights and that we provide services for everybody in our communities, no matter where they come from and what their status is. This is a very timely conversation, not only because of the important amount of funding that the European Union is going to put to the service of the new agenda, but also because we are dealing with a new Pact for Migration and Asylum, a renewed partnership with the Southern Neighbourhood, but as well with a new treaty around pandemic, which is going to be signaling how we are going to deal with emergencies. Let us also not forget the discussions that will take place at COP26. It is timely indeed. This partnership that we have developed together has shifted the way that my world organization, United Cities and Local Governments, with over 250,000 members from around the world in over 140 countries, are looking at migration. And if the Mediterranean is certainly not the only place in the world where this is happening, it is a very symbolic space because it puts together many continents, many regions. And basically, if we do it right here, we can do it right anywhere. This partnership has inspired renewed partnerships around the issue of migration, renewed narrative, and above all, renewed action. We have been able to gather the Gaziantep Declaration, and mobilize our membership around it. We are now developing the Lampedusa Charter, and I hope Sindaco Martello will be talking about as well. We have managed to renew the commitment of our membership to enhance local action and global advocacy, promote community-based approaches to human mobility, to consolidate a new notion of citizenship, to commit to providing universal access to services, and to recognize the contribution of all people to peace and our society. So in order to do this, and I will end with this, we need to call for an enhanced, meaningful dialogue, which we hope a new phase of this partnership will make together. We need to tackle some of the tough issues that we haven't tackled so much in the first part of our partnership. I think you have highlighted jobs, and I think that is a discussion that we need to have. We need to talk more about integration and jobs, but we also need to talk about alternatives to detention and the detention centers. We need to see what we have learned in this process and listen to the local level to find other alternatives. We need to talk about financing, and not only international financing, but national financing. But above all, we need a renewed legal framework that allows local and regional governments to act. So, colleagues, I will leave it here. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I am grateful for the dialogue that we are establishing, and we trust that our continued work in this important region of the world, with this Mare Nostrum that unites us and does not separate us, can really make a difference also elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emilia, and thank you for highlighting the change of perception that this partnership has brought to your organization when it comes to migration. And let me, on my side, also express to which extent partnering with UCLG has changed the perception of ICMPD when it comes to city and the role that they play in the field of migration. So I think it's a mutually beneficial partnership, which is at the heart of the renewed partnership idea of the new agenda for the Mediterranean. And as you indicated as well, if it works in the Mediterranean, if it can work in the Mediterranean, then it can work elsewhere. I had the pleasure myself last week to attend the Rabat process meeting, where West African and Central African countries were represented, but also cities. You yourself intervened, which was highlighting the importance of working with local governments in this particular framework, the Rabat process. And we know that other regions in the world are particularly interested. You highlighted the importance of looking into long-term issues, jobs, economic stabilities, and also investing into the necessary capacities of local level, be it in terms of legal framework or also simply in terms of funding also from the national level. I would like now to indicate that our other partner, UN Habitat, will be doing an intervention here. Maimouna Mocharif is currently attending the UNGA in New York and was not able to be with us today, but she recorded a message on behalf of the UN Habitat.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to join you virtually today. And I would like to start by thanking the representative of the International Center for Migration Policy Development, ICMPD, United Cities and Local Governments, UCLG, the European Union, and the distinguished mayors with whom I'm sharing the stage today for initiating and contributing to these critical discussions. I would also like to thank all the participants who will contribute their knowledge and expertise on the urban governance of migration. I want to be clear. Migration is part of the urban DNA. It has historically shaped our cities, where mobility has converged and contributed to social, cultural, economic, and political development. Cities are and always have been major destinations for migrants in search for better life, safety, and access to services, housing, and employment. While in most countries, national governments are the ones mandated with managing migration frameworks, it is at the local level where many of those policies are actually implemented. It is the local actors who experience how those international and national frameworks affects people's life. To this end, the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration and the Global Compact on Refugees both acknowledge the importance of local authorities for shaping and implementing these international commitments. Remarkably, both compacts emphasize how city leaders are crucial to ensure that no one is left behind, to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable in line with human rights principles and the SDGs. The new urban agenda also calls for supporting local actions. It advocates for frameworks that support the positive contributions of migrants to cities towards social cohesion, inclusion, and safety. We need to ensure that the needs of all inhabitants are met while recognizing the specific needs of those in vulnerable situations. Migrants in cities often face challenges in accessing adequate housing and basic administrative or legal services. They often live in segregated areas where they lack access to the opportunities that cities can provide. Segregation also limits meaningful interactions with the host community, which negatively impacts on social cohesion. Especially in times of crisis, migrants also face barriers to accessing services they urgently need, as well as reliable and time-bound information. UN Habitat, as the United Nations agency mandated to promote sustainable urban development, is working globally to support the capacity of local governments to provide equal access to rights and basic services for all. We also support local governments to foster an urban culture of inclusivity where all are considered equal. This encompasses inclusive and participatory urban planning that accounts for the needs of migrants, refugees, and IDPs, the collection of locally generated data and knowledge, the development of affordable housing, safe and accessible public spaces, and basic services for all. Through these actions, UN Habitat also seeks to contribute to overall stability and social cohesion, reducing the risk of violence and conflict in urban areas. Through our work, we see a clear need for stronger multi-level cooperation, recognitions of a human rights-based approach, and acknowledgements of the important role that local governments play as key actors in migration governance. Migration has intersecting global, regional, national, and local dimensions. We also see that no organization, no country, and no city on their own can tackle the complexity of its governance. This is why I am particularly happy to be here today to celebrate our partnership with UCLG and ICMPD. I also thank the members of the Mediterranean City-to-City Migration Network for their enormous and often innovative engagement when finding solutions for migrants in their cities. At UN Habitat, based on our long-term partnership and experience working with local actors, we will continue to advocate for a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach for advancing effective and people-centered migration governance and empower cities to be critical agents for migrants' inclusion. Thank you.
I would like now to welcome with us the panel, which will be intervening today in the debate of renewed partnership and migration governance in the Mediterranean, local governments as assets for sustainability. We will have a keynote address by Vincenzo Bianco, the rapporteur of the European Committee of the Regions on the renewed partnership with the Southern Neighbourhood, and Mayor of Catania, which is a city evidently which has seen a lot of the reality, local reality of migration over the last years. We will also have interventions as part of the panel of Ms. Souhad Abderrahim, Mayor of Tunis. Tunis was mentioned by Commissioner Vareli as an example of cities which are now representing the diversity of origin, transit and destination. We will have also an intervention from Ms. Carola Gunnarsson, Mayor of Salah and spokesperson of UCLG Europe as a Vice President. We will finally have an intervention from Mr. Salvatore Martello, the Mayor of Lampedusa. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mayor Vincenzo Bianco to intervene as Mayor of Catania and rapporteur of the European Committee of the Regions on the renewed partnership for the Southern Neighbourhood.
Grazie di cuore. Un saluto al commissario, al direttore generale, al segretario generale, al direttore esecutivo, ai sindaci presenti e collegati e a voi gentili ospiti. È per me davvero un onore rivolgervi in qualità di membro del Comitato delle Regioni dell'Europa che ha partecipato alla preparazione di questa riunione, ma anche nella qualità di rappresentante dell'Assemblea regionale e locale euromediterranea, l'ARLEM, costituita nel 2010 a Barcellona per dare voce agli enti locali e regionali dell'area mediterranea. Vorrei anzitutto sottolineare, è doveroso, il ruolo centrale delle città e delle regioni, in quanto responsabili dell'attuazione delle varie politiche connesse agli obiettivi dell'Unione Europea. Io ho fatto parte del Comitato delle Regioni sin dalla sua costituzione, ho avuto altre responsabilità, tra cui quella di Ministro dell'Interno della Repubblica Italiana, sono attualmente impegnato nel Comitato delle Regioni e in Harlem e sono stato il relatore di questo parere. Nell'Unione Europea gli enti locali e regionali attuano oltre il 70% di tutte le direttive e la legislazione dell'Unione Europea. Ma sento molto personalmente il tema di cui stiamo parlando. Io vengo da Catania, sono stato a lungo per 15 anni sindaco di quella città e posso dirvi che sono pienamente consapevole di quanto tragico sia il fenomeno di cui parliamo. Pensate che nel 2014-2015, nel periodo della guerra tra Iraq e Siria, soltanto in una settimana nella mia città sono arrivate 8.000 persone. E in questo momento stiamo preoccupati tutti perché in Italia, per esempio, ci sono 5.000 profughi dall'Afghanistan e c'è stato un sentimento corale, una reazione della città assolutamente indimenticabile. Pensate, c'erano tantissimi bambini tra quelli che scappavano dalla Siria. A un certo punto ho fatto un appello ai miei concittadini per regalare un giocattolo. Mi hanno riempito il palazzo municipale di Catania, il Palazzo degli Elefanti, di giocattoli, di migliaia e migliaia di giocattoli per venire incontro e regalare un sorriso. Il rinnovato partenariato con il vicinato meridionale, con la nuova agenda per il Mediterraneo, che l'Unione Europea si appresta a sottoscrivere con 12 paesi della sponda sud e di cui ho avuto l'onore di redigere il relativo parere ai sensi dell'articolo 307 del Trattato di funzionamento dell'Unione Europea, rappresenta certamente una svolta importante con riguardo ai rapporti con gli Stati extraeuropei, e ciò con significativo e specifico riferimento alla considerazione e alla tutela della persona. Per la prima volta, infatti, il legislatore europeo ha messo a punto un piano di azione che individua come proprio focus primario il singolo soggetto, la persona, l'individuo, finalmente degno di rilevanza principale rispetto alle implicazioni e alle ricadute di natura economica che un'iniziativa del genere comunque possiede. Come premessa ad ogni approccio alla questione migratoria, non dobbiamo dimenticare che il mantenimento alla base del sistema di primo ingresso e il conseguente carico di responsabilità che questo comporta in carico ai paesi posti alle frontiere dell'Europa, dell'Unione, rimane un problema fondamentale e bisogna superarlo. È necessaria una maggiore condivisione degli sforzi relativi alla gestione degli arrivi e dell'accoglienza, anche attraverso l'introduzione di incentivi e sanzioni idonee a garantire una effettiva solidarietà tra i paesi europei. In tale rinnovata ottica, il tema della gestione della migrazione, che origina anche dalla maggioranza dei paesi parte del partenariato, poi ci sono naturalmente i paesi che vengono dall'Africa subsahariana, poi ci sono i paesi che vengono dall'Asia, ma molti vengono dai paesi che sono partner, ha un'importanza cruciale. È indubbio che solo attraverso il ricorso a forme sempre più strette di collaborazione tra gli Stati che si affacciano sul Mediterraneo, tutt'uno con la riscoperta della centralità della protezione umanitaria, dobbiamo attuare concrete forme di regolamentazione, si possono fare dei flussi migratori. Solo così sarà possibile porre fine al drammatico fenomeno della immigrazione irregolare, quella gestita da trafficanti di esseri umani che qualche volta sono colpiti ma che troppe volte ancora oggi la fanno franca. È quella un'autentica emergenza umanitaria, le cui tragiche conseguenze caratterizzano ormai da troppo tempo le cronache quotidiane e rispetto a cui l'opinione pubblica sembra in qualche caso addirittura essere assuefatta. Tutto ciò è inaccettabile e di questo l'Europa, anche con questo nuovo partenariato, sembra finalmente avere preso coscienza. Tuttavia, ai fini indicati, ritengo che non si possa e non si debba prescindere da due ulteriori elementi, entrambi espressi chiaramente nel parere approvato a larghissima maggioranza dal Comitato delle Regioni. Innanzitutto, la promulgazione di una Carta mediterranea dei diritti umani, compendiata da un competente apparato giudiziario, unico e reale strumento, a mio parere, capace di porsi come concreto strumento di tutela proprio e soprattutto a favore della massa di disperati in fuga dai propri luoghi di origine e regolarmente oggetto di vessazioni e anche di violenze. In più, un concreto e sostanziale supporto non solo economico ma soprattutto a favore delle autorità locali per aiutarli ad affrontare, quelle di primo approdo, per aiutarli a affrontare le 1000 emergenze. E ciò sulla base di una radicale ridefinizione della propria politica in materia di migrazione. Le regioni e le città impegnate giorno per giorno nell'accoglienza di centinaia di poveri individui, spesso versanti in gravi condizioni di salute, non possono più reggere da sole questo fardello. Questo è indiscutibile. Bisogna insistere sull'idea di una carta fondamentale dei diritti umani che riguardi tutti i paesi del Mediterraneo, che accettino di avere un'asticella meno alta di quella dell'Unione Europea, però con alcuni principi fondamentali che sarebbe bene ci siano. Personalmente ritengo ineluttabile che le due condizioni che ho indicato vengano soddisfatte, soprattutto considerata la portata del fenomeno migratorio che caratterizza le rotte verso l'Europa del Nord, verso l'Europa dal Nord Africa e dal Medio Oriente. Se così non fosse, ogni proclama, dichiarazione di intenti e ogni piano di azione si risolverebbe inevitabilmente in un fallimento. In questo contesto non è sufficiente ancora il ruolo che le regioni e gli enti locali possono rivestire nell'ambito del sistema di accoglienza. Noi come Comitato delle Regioni abbiamo auspicato l'introduzione della possibilità per tali enti di accedere direttamente a finanziamenti europei finalizzati a sostenere iniziative e progetti in materia. E tale inversione di tendenza che noi auspichiamo deve diventare una realtà perché ci sia la maggiore concretezza possibile. Solo una gestione condivisa e dunque solo all'interno di una prospettiva di collaborazione tra le competenti autorità di tutti i paesi coinvolti sotto l'egida dell'Unione Europea si può avere davvero e sperare di avere un modo di affrontare con successo le problematiche in questione. In tale prospettiva, le regioni e le città accolgono con favore e incoraggiano la conclusione di altri accordi di collaborazione e di partenariato, che sono gli unici strumenti atti a conferire una capacità di cooperazione e di condivisione tra l'Europa e questi paesi. E infine ho chiesto di aprire dei forum e di far crescere la capacità di comunicazione e di ascolto per evitare che le norme restino scritte e non diventino operative. Noi riteniamo fondamentale, accanto alla ridefinizione delle politiche europee nelle direzioni che abbiamo indicato, che vengano intraprese iniziative a livello di istituzioni centrali e che dei singoli Stati membri dell'Unione Europea per sensibilizzare l'opinione pubblica sui temi quali solidarietà, tolleranza, rispetto della legalità e dialogo. Tutto ciò per migliorare il modo in cui le tematiche concernenti i migranti vengono percepite. Il problema della percezione del fenomeno dei migranti reale è importante, perché molto spesso vengono generate irrazionalmente paure che poi influenzano negativamente l'opinione pubblica. E proprio chi genera la paura è magari colui il quale raccoglie un consenso su questi specifici argomenti. È innegabile che solo un radicale mutamento di percezione può rappresentare un presupposto essenziale all'obiettivo di una reale rivoluzione dal basso nella considerazione dei migranti. Svolta quest'ultima, e concludo, che garantirebbe all'Europa sì attenta alla tutela dei diritti dei propri cittadini, ma un ruolo di assoluta centralità con riguardo alla protezione della persona in sé considerata. Passi avanti sono stati fatti in questi ultimi mesi, anche durante la vicenda Covid. Le regioni e le città europee chiedono di avere coraggio, di portare avanti le aperture che abbiamo registrato e di cominciare a lavorare per farne delle nuove. Noi, rappresentanti delle città e delle regioni europee, ci siamo. Grazie.
Mayor Bianco, thank you very much for this very enlightening intervention and keynote speech. I would have a lot of things that I would like to highlight from your intervention, but I would like to particularly take one among the many very important things that you highlighted, which relates to the perception. What you mentioned with regard to the perception of the phenomenon, you may know or may not know that ICMPD has been working for the last 10 years very intensively on the issue of the narratives of migration and communication on migration. We strongly believe that distorted narratives limit policy options, and that governance, migration governance and governance in general requires planning, requires evidence, and we are in a context where the narrative is restricting our ability to maneuver in terms of policy options, then we are not helping ourselves. So it is also the responsibilities of all involved to try to limit this distortion of the phenomenon. And I would like to just use a quote of a high-profile European politician who recently indicated or made a statement saying, and allow me to quote, "Polarizing is easy. Anyone can do that. We have to speak plainly, but not polarize. We have to be able to integrate, keeping a society together and bringing people together. That is the hard work." So I think that this is something that I would like to bear in mind, and for that we need all the stakeholders to work hand in hand. But before we go into the main panelists, after these important opening remarks from the European Commission, from ICMPD Director General, from the Commissioner of the DG NEAR, from ICMPD Director General, from the Secretary General of UCLG, and unfortunately we were unable to broadcast the intervention from our Executive Director, the Executive Director of UN Habitat, and Mayor Bianco. I would like just to perhaps introduce the panel and what we will be focusing on. I think we will showcase, we have already done so, we will showcase what cities do and what they can do in terms of contribution to migration governance and the place they can hold. We will particularly highlight the importance that they might have as stakeholders dealing with the migration realities on the ground. We will also particularly look into the whole idea of how can we work better together. How can we create the bridges which are necessary in a vertical relationship with all the layers from the international, global, regional, national, and local level. We will also, and that is very important, look into the future. Where can we go from here? We have, I think, acknowledged the role of cities. The evidence is here. The research has been, to a certain extent or great extent, conducted when it comes to the importance that cities play in the migration realities, what importance they can play in the overall migration governance cycle, notably in terms of policy development. The dialogues are established. There are numerous frameworks which exist now in this regard, but it is important that we look into the next stage and notably how to empower cities. We have heard references to funding. We have heard references to capacities. We know that notably at ICMPD, we would focus particularly on all issues related to professionalization of migration stakeholders, modernization of capacities of migration stakeholders of all types, basically, but also the importance of communication. As we have highlighted in this latest intervention from Mayor Bianco, the importance of the perception of the phenomena and how we can better maneuver if we take a stronger role in driving a balanced, evidence-driven narrative. So I would like now to move on to the panel and introduce our first panelist, representing a city which has taken part in the MC2CM since the very beginning and has been holding a very important role, hosting also some major activities, major events, and undertaking a number of concrete actions in this regard. So I would like to give the floor to the Mayor of Tunis, Ms. Souhad Abderrahim. You have the floor.
شكرا صباحي لكل الحضور أصدقائي زملائي زميلاتي وشكرا على هذه الدعوة. الشكر لمنظمي هذا اللقاء وهذا الموضوع المهم جدا أن تشارك السلطات المحلية في السياسات العامة للهجرة. تونس أرض الحضارات كما ذكرتم، أرض التلاقي، أرض التنوع. هذه تونس، وعلى هذا الأساس فبلدية تونس تولي اهتماما كبيرا بمسألة الهجرة انطلاقا بوعيها التام وبدور المواطنين بالخارج كسفراء لتونس في مختلف أنحاء العالم، واهتمامها كذلك بدورهم الثقافي والاقتصادي على الصعيد العالمي، وأيضا دورهم الهام في تونس. أي مهاجر من أي بلد كان هو أيضا مخول للاطلاع بهذا الدور سواء في مدينته الأصلية أو في مدينة الوصول، وهذا يتطلب مزيد التعاون بين الدول ومزيد تمكين الفاعلين في مجال الهجرة ومنظورهم. فالمهاجرين بالخارج لهم دور مهم في إرساء التقارب ودعم التفاهم بين المدن، وبالتالي عملت مدينة تونس على الإحاطة بالجالية التونسية المقيمة بالخارج وتنظيم ملتقيات ثقافية لفائدتها في إطار علاقات التوأمة التي تربطنا بعديد من المدن في مختلف أنحاء العالم. كما عملنا على تثمين دور هذه الجالية في تنشيط علاقات التعاون مع الجهات الأجنبية وتحفيزها. وأذكر في هذا المجال على سبيل الذكر ولا الحصر ما تقوم به الجالية التونسية المقيمة بكولونيا من مجهودات لتنشيط العلاقة بين بلديتي تونس وكولونيا، من ذلك أنها انتظمت في جمعيتين هدفهما هو تنشيط التعاون اللامركزي بين المدينتين حتى نتمكن من الاستفادة من التمويلات المتاحة للجمعيات. وقد قامت الجمعية الأولى في ذكرى الاحتفال ب500 العلاقات إقامة العلاقات الثنائية بتنظيم معرض ثقافي وسياحي بأهم شارع بكولونيا للترويج للثقافة التونسية وللمنتوج والوجهة السياحية التونسية. أود أن أعرج كذلك على تجربة أخرى متميزة بنجاح، حيث في مدينة تونس تتمثل في ترميم مقر الراشدية وفرز الأرشيف الموسيقي الذي يرجع إلى حوالي 100 سنة، والذي لم تكن الاستفادة منه متيسرة للجميع لصعوبة قراءته، وبالتالي تم ترقمنته حتى يصبح في متناول كافة المهتمين بهذا التراث من طلبة وأساتذة وموسيقيين. وقد تم ذلك بالشراكة بين بلدية تونس وجمعية كوليكتيف كرياتيف والمعهد الوطني للتراث، وبفضل اعتمادات من قبل بعض المواطنين بالخارج. وتبعا لنجاح هذا المشروع تحصلنا على تمويل أهم من الجمعية الدولية رؤساء البلديات الفرنكوفونية لإقامة مدرسة لتعليم الفنون الرقمية لفائدة الشبان العاطلين عن العمل. وبالتالي فإن للتونسيين بالخارج دور موازي للتونسيين بالداخل، وتبقى مدينتنا وبلادنا بحاجة ماسة لهم. واعتبارا لما تتيحه الهجرة واللجوء من ثراء اجتماعي وثقافي واقتصادي سواء في مدينة الاستقبال أو مدينة المغادرة، كان لابد من تضافر جهود كافة المعنيين لإيجاد حلول ناجعة للمآسي المرتبطة اليوم بمسألة الهجرة، وعدم اللجوء إلى حلول ربما غير مقبولة إنسانيا. أذكر منها خاصة اعتماد الانتقاء وتشجيع الهجرة لدى أصحاب الشهائد العليا، مع ما ينجر عنه ذلك من استنزاف لمدن المغادرة. وبالتوازي مع الاهتمام بالتونسيين بالخارج، حرصت تونس على حسن استقبال الوافدين عليها ترسيخا لتقاليد قديمة نذكر منها أنه تم استيطان الفينيقيين وغيرهم من الوافدين على البلاد التونسية عبر التاريخ، الجالية الإيطالية كذلك والمالطية، ومساهمتهم في إثراء المخزون الثقافي لمدينة تونس. في بداية النصف الثاني من القرن المنقضي استقبلت مدينة تونس أعداد هامة من المهاجرين الداخليين الوافدين على المدينة العتيقة من المدن الداخلية، والذي أثر على النسيج العمراني للمدينة ودفع إلى تنظيم التوسع العمراني لتونس خارج حدود المدينة العتيقة، والمدينة التي تسمى المدينة الأوروبية باعتبار إنشائها موفى القرن 19 وبداية القرن 20. ولعل آخر تجربة تمت معايشتها في هذا المجال المد التضامني الشعبي تجاه المهاجرين الليبيين أثناء الثورة الليبية. كما لا يفوتني أن أنوه بما يحظى به الطلبة الأجانب وخاصة من المنتمين إلى أفريقيا جنوب الصحراء من إحاطة، وذلك في إطار ما نستقبله سنويا من مهاجرين يقدر عددهم حسب ما تؤكد إحصائيات المعهد الوطني للإحصاء لسنة 2014 53,490 مهاجر، وهو ما دعا السلطات التونسية إلى إحداث كتابة دولة للهجرة والتونسيين بالخارج. وقد شاركت مدينة تونس في مشروع الهجرة من مدينة إلى أخرى بالمنطقة المتوسطية، وذكرتم أنه ضروري اليوم أن تكون لنا هذا التمكين ما بين الدول المتوسطية لإثراء التجربة وربما لإيجاد الحلول الإيجابية الأنجح في هذه المرحلة، خاصة ونحن نعيش الجائحة التي مست كل المدن. شاركت مدينة تونس في مشروع الهجرة من مدينة إلى أخرى بالمنطقة المتوسطية، والذي أشرفت عليه كل من المنظمة العالمية للهجرة والمنظمة العالمية للمدن والسلطات المحلية المتحدة. وقد مكنتها هذه التجربة من تبادل التجارب والخبرات مع المدن المتوسطية الأخرى ومع الخبراء المتخصصين في الموضوع، مما مكنها من دعم إمكانياتها في مجال الإحاطة بهذا الشأن. وانطلاقا من اهتمامنا بهذا المشروع انخرطت مدينة تونس في المرحلة الثانية منه تعبيرا منها عن التزامها بالعمل مع بقية الشركاء لإنجاح هذه المرحلة، خاصة وأن انخراطنا مع بقية الشركاء في إنجاز هذا المشروع كان حافزا للعمل في إطار شبكات لمزيد الإحاطة بملف الهجرة بالتعاون الوثيق مع السلطات الوطنية المعنية وفي إطار السياسة العامة للدولة، وبما من شأنه أن يعود بالنفع على الجميع. من ذلك انخراطها في مشروع في إطار التعاون التونسي الإيطالي يتيح للشبان التونسيين الظفر بدورات تدريبية بمؤسسات إيطالية ويرافقهم في بعض مشاريعهم بتونس إثر الاستفادة من الخبرة الإيطالية والانفتاح على الثقافة السائدة شمال المتوسط. كما انتفعت بلدية تونس بمشروع تم إنجازه في إطار التعاون التونسي الإيطالي، تمكنا بفضله من إيفاد عدد من الشبان التونسيين إلى إيطاليا للانتفاع بتدريبات مهنية بالمؤسسات الإيطالية المختصة، مما مكنهم من تيسير انتدابهم بمؤسسات إيطالية منتصبة بتونس بالنسبة إلى البعض ومن إطلاق مشاريعهم الخاصة بالنسبة إلى البعض الآخر. كما ندرس حاليا بادرة قدمتها لنا جمعية متخصصة بدعم الجمعية الدولية لرؤساء البلديات الفرنكوفونية تهدف إلى إنشاء فضاء للعمل المشترك يخص رائدي الأعمال من المهاجرين إلى تونس من جنوب الصحراء، يكون منبعا للإبداع والتجديد وفضاء للاندماج والعيش المشترك. فهذا الحوار ما بين الدول المتوسطية وما بين المدن من شأنه أن يؤسس لمشروع مدمج ما بين المدن. أحيي المجهود المقدم فيه وندعو إلى مزيد تمكين الحكومات المحلية والفاعلين في مجال الهجرة لحماية حقوق المهاجرين باعتبار الإنسان مواطن عالمي، مع ضرورة تمكين السلطات المحلية وتشريكها في رسم السياسات الوطنية للهجرة اعتبارا لدورهم المهم، لأن المدن ورؤساء البلديات وعمد المدن هي التي تواجه المشاكل اليومية للمهاجرين، وهي التي عليها أن تجد الحلول لسكانها باعتبارهم سكان لتلك المدن. وهنا أؤكد على ضرورة تشريك البلديات، مزيد تمكين كذلك المجالس البلدية والمنتخبين المحليين في هذا المجال، وتقدير المجهودات الكبيرة التي تقوم بها المدن. وكانت الجائحة أثناء فترة الكورونا خير دليل، حيث أن رؤساء البلديات والعمد هم من اتصلوا بالمعنيين بالأمر وحاولوا الإحاطة بهم وإيجاد حلول ودعمهم ومساندتهم وتقديم المساعدات لهم. فدور المحليين مهم جدا باعتبار قربهم من هذه الجالية، باعتبار قربهم من ساكني المدن، في حين خلافا لذلك لا يقع تشريكهم في رسم السياسات العامة ولا تمكينهم كذلك باعتمادات مالية لمواجهة هذه المشاكل المتعددة اليومية التي يعيشونها. مهم جدا هذا اللقاء، مهم جدا هذا التفاعل، أن اليوم نجد حلول للمدن، خاصة المدن كانت مدن بلد عبور، بلد موافدين، أو كل المدن تعاني عديد الإشكاليات. مهم جدا أن يقع دعمها اليوم، أن يقع تبادل الأفكار، تبادل الآراء، رسم سياسات عامة. مشكورين على هذه الدعوة الكريمة، وكذلك على تشريك مدينة تونس في هذا اللقاء. وكما ذكرتم تونس ومدينة تونس مدينة تلاقي الحضارات، مدينة الاندماج، مدينة التعايش، نرجو أن تكون كذلك دائما. وشكرا على حسن الانتباه.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this intervention. There would be a number of very important points which should be highlighted from your intervention, dear Mayor. I was highlighting the importance of going into action. I think you demonstrated that you are already in action. You are undertaking a number of programs, various kinds. particularly, I took note of this exhibition that you were talking about with regard to the contribution of immigrants to Tunisia, for instance. Interestingly enough, we at ICMPD Mediterranean, we are located south of you. Often when we travel from Valletta to Tunis, we say we go north. Interestingly, over the recent months, there was a whole series on the news about the history of Maltese immigration to Tunisia and how basically these societies were integrated into the country of Tunisia. I also note something very important that you highlighted, the importance of internal migration, urban-bound migration at national level, and how that is also something which needs to be taken into account when it comes to the management of cities. And finally, very important, obviously, the importance of creating this relationship, this trust-based relationship with the national authorities to work together on shaping the right framework, the right strategy to empower all actors concerned in the most efficient way, and to give them the means to act. Very last point that I would like to mention from your intervention, which I think is particularly relevant, the idea of undertaking a mapping of all the challenges related to the migration realities at local level and how together with the various stakeholders one can tackle them and find the most workable solutions for the benefit of all. So thank you so much for this intervention. We will, I kindly ask you to stay on the panel with us because we will most likely have some follow-up questions. I would like now to move on to our next panelist, and similarly to Valletta to Tunis going up north. Now from Tunis to up north, we will be moving to the mayor of Salah, Ms. Carola Gunnarsson, who is also the CMR spokesperson and UCLG Europe vice president. Ms. Gunnarsson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this event for allowing the voice of local and regional governments to be heard in Brussels today. As my colleagues in this panel can corroborate, we know how human mobility is neither new nor reversible phenomenon, and it is constantly shaping our territories. We also know that this human mobility, internal or international, by choice or by necessity, has shaped the evolution and development of not just Europe, but also the whole world. The new Pact on Migration and Asylum, issued by the European Commission in September 2020, is the common reference for all the member states regarding the management of the migration and inclusion processes. Together with the action plan, they represent the overall structure of a new European common framework for migration and integration issues. The internal task force on migration and integration at CMR is preparing a resolution paper to highlight the role of the local and regional governments in the new pact and in the action plan, while underlining the challenges we see in these new pieces of legislation according to our daily experiences on the ground. At the same time, we are involved in the Lampedusa Charter process, which is particularly important for us, as it states not only the importance of an active and acknowledged role of the local and regional governments in the integration policies, but also inspires the discussion with new wordings and inputs like the inclusive citizenship, shifting the narrative on migration and integration. We need to underline that migration is neither new nor reversible, and that migration flows will increase in the coming years with climate change and disasters being a key factor that need to be taken into account when managing migration. The challenge, however, and our endeavor as representatives of all citizens is to tackle these complex realities and the aspirations of all our communities in a fair, sustainable, and inclusive manner. A good interaction between all levels is a prerequisite for a sustainable and long-term reception. Well-functioning integration is necessary to meet the demographic challenges faced by many states. Successful integration also contributes to the growing demand for labor in, for example, the welfare sector. My mother is living at an elderly home in Sala, and almost all the assistant nurses working at this elderly home are migrants. And we are very grateful that they would like to help us with the elderly care and the welfare system. Indeed, local and regional authorities have a crucial role in supporting and strengthening migrants' inclusion and removing barriers to their contribution to the local development. The access to basic services is the starting point, but a strong coordination is necessary between all spheres of administration, in particular the national level and the stakeholders at local, national, and international level. If the new European Pact for Migration and Asylum does not sustainably account for this landscape and fails to provide adequate mechanism for bold and meaningful cooperation, it will not succeed. Governments around the world must now show decisiveness and work together to ensure people's safety as well as international security. We must ensure that migrants can be protected by safe and legal routes. We have to move from emergencies to long-term strategies. We need to secure the access to health system. And above all, we must overcome negative attitudes towards migration, anti-migrant rhetoric and sentiment, and work for inclusive societies. An inclusive society of all, an inclusive society aims at empowering and promoting the social, economic, and political inclusion of all, irrespective of sex, age, disability, ethnicity, origin, religion, economic, or other status. It is a matter of protecting human rights, and it is a society that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gunnarsson, for this very interesting intervention. I take particular note of the somehow reality check that you gave us in this intervention, highlighting again, we talk about migration realities and highlighting the fact that sometimes the way we perceive migration, the way we tackle migration, the way we hear about migration in terms of main orientations, notably at, let's say, a more state level or national level, would perhaps be sometimes more based on principles and less on the pragmatic views of the migration reality. You mentioned the fact that migration is also extremely necessary for your cities. The fact that the health sector, for instance, is very much filled by a number of international migrants who are coming to basically provide the basic services that we in Europe have been used to, and without foreigners to support and complement the needs in this regard, it would be extremely challenging. We at ICMPD have been working with WHO, notably on this issue of mobility of health workers, and the fact that in the coming decades, it is in the millions, the estimates made by the WHO in terms of need for health workers, and the fact that therefore mobility for these necessary needs will need to be tackled, will need to be managed efficiently. You also mentioned the fact that, and again, that is a reality check of migration realities, migration will increase. There will be a number of clear phenomena which are happening, which are evidenced, which are very clearly impacting us all in many, many ways already, and which will trigger further migration. So in this regard, it is very important that all stakeholders are working together indeed, local level and the national level, in order to tackle it as efficiently as possible in the most comprehensive way possible. I thank you very much for your intervention. I'm sure that there will be a question coming up soon, but now I will go back south, much further south, back to the heart of the Mediterranean region, and look into an island in a city which has made the headlights a number of times over the years for often talking about the narrative of migration to highlight some of the biggest challenges related to migration and loss of lives. About 6 years ago, one of the most dramatic events in the history of migration in the Mediterranean occurred off the shores of Lampedusa, and the mayor of Lampedusa, Mr. Salvatore Martello, is taking a very active role in promoting the voice of cities and the importance of their place in the overall migration governance, and notably when it comes to the charter, which was already referred to a number of times. Mayor Martello, I would like to give you the floor, please.
Buongiorno a tutti. Ma ogni qualvolta si deve affrontare in Europa un problema delicato come quello delle migrazioni, si parla immediatamente di fondi. Ebbene, il problema della migrazione non è solo un problema di fondi, è anche un problema, come si dice, ideologico, è un problema politico, è un problema sociale serio. E quindi si tenta, ogni qualvolta si parla sempre di migrazioni, di accontentare l'opinione pubblica europea senza tenere conto di che cos'è il fenomeno delle migrazioni. Allora, ancora oggi in Europa si fa una distinzione di che cosa sono i migranti, una cosa sbagliatissima. Allora, se sono rifugiati, va bene, scatta tutta la solidarietà del mondo. Giustamente quello che è successo in Afghanistan è stato affrontato in maniera massiccia, in maniera anche molto veloce da parte dell'Europa. Ma quanti altri Afghanistan ci sono stati in questi anni e quanti ce ne sono ancora che l'Europa non prende in considerazione? Allora bisogna, non è solo la percezione, bisogna cambiare atteggiamento nei confronti del fenomeno dell'immigrazione. Quello che noi stiamo vivendo e stiamo affrontando oggi è solo il problema, il fenomeno dell'accoglienza. E quello che tende di fare l'Europa nei confronti dei paesi rivieraschi del Mediterraneo è quello di mettere dei tappi, di cercare di tappare un pochettino la non gestione del fenomeno dell'immigrazione. Ecco perché è importante il ruolo e l'azione che sta svolgendo l'UCLG, proponendo la Carta di Lampedusa, perché si parla anche lì di diritti. Lì si entra nel merito di cosa siamo costretti ad affrontare le aree di frontiere, qual è la responsabilità dei sindaci e della popolazione che vivono queste aree di frontiera. Allora, se voi oggi guardate i dati, si dice che sono sbarcati in Italia quasi 40.000 persone. Non dicono che sono sbarcati 30.000 persone a Lampedusa. E quindi il peso degli sbarchi, ma il peso dell'accoglienza, quello che c'è in Italia, è concentrato solo ed esclusivamente sull'isola di Lampedusa. E allora si pone il problema come fare per cercare di non creare rivoluzioni, di non creare, come si dice, guerre intestine all'interno del paese dove noi accogliamo. E là si cerca di lavorare per elaborare dei sistemi di accoglienza che mettono in sicurezza da un lato i migranti e dall'altro lato la popolazione o le persone che vivono o che vengono a trovare a visitare Lampedusa, perché non ci dimentichiamo che Lampedusa è anche un'isola turistica. Però contemporaneamente siamo dimenticati. Contemporaneamente la gente non riceve la stessa attenzione. La pubblica amministrazione non viene aiutata come dovrebbe essere aiutata, o come si è fatto quando è scoppiato l'incendio a Lesbo, che immediatamente l'Europa interviene e dice ti mando i soldi per rifare di nuovo un altro centro d'accoglienza. Allora il problema è come affrontare il fenomeno delle migrazioni. Perché dobbiamo sentire parlare di corridoi per le università, di corridoi umanitari, e non dobbiamo sentire parlare mai di corridoi regolari? Perché non possiamo avere corridoi regolari? E allora prima di spostare i soldi, prima di fare interventi, bisogna fare camminare, come si dice, le idee, fare camminare i principi universali. Ecco che poi sulla carta di Lampedusa scatta l'idea che il Mediterraneo deve essere un'isola, ma deve essere un Mediterraneo di pace. Perché la pace non solo è un antidoto alla guerra, ma anche la pace è per combattere questi disastri globali che stanno investendo l'intero continente, il mondo intero. E allora bisogna ripartire, basta fare le discriminazioni tra migranti economici e migranti non economici o rifugiati, immigranti e migranti. Il movimento delle popolazioni avvengono talmente naturalmente che in Europa ci rifiutiamo di affrontare l'argomento, come ci rifiutiamo in Italia di affrontare il fenomeno delle migrazioni. E quando io parlo sul Global Compact for Migration, questa grande operazione in politica, perché non viene elaborato da un partito politico o da una nazione che esprime una politica diversa dalla nostra, ma viene elaborato dall'ONU, addirittura si rifiuta e non si discute di un argomento di che cos'è la migrazione, cosa sono il movimento delle persone, come deve essere affrontato e come non deve essere affrontato, e poi la risposta che arriva da parte dell'Unione Europea è quella che finanzieremo dei progetti. I progetti dovrebbe essere un progetto globale, universale. E allora non è solo un fenomeno, un problema di percezione. Già le piccole isole minori, le aree di frontiera, non vengono prese già neanche in considerazione. Figuriamoci se non si riesce a parlare e a imporre molte volte nei confronti dei media qual è il disagio che vivono le aree di frontiera. Possiamo sopportare che ancora il Mediterraneo sia un mare di morte? Possiamo continuare ad assistere persone? Non c'è stato solo la strage del 3 ottobre del 2013. Molto spesso, ultimamente, abbiamo trovato altri 2 cadaveri. e non sappiamo da dove vengono, quando sono affondati, quando sono morti. Il problema è che dobbiamo avere la responsabilità di guardare il fenomeno per intero, perché ci sono diverse modalità di migrazioni, ci sono diverse modalità di accoglienza e quindi dobbiamo cercare tutti insieme di lavorare e lottare per cercare di fare diventare quello che attualmente è illegale, di trasformarlo in legalità. Ecco che parlo io di corridoi regolari fra i diversi paesi che hanno la popolazione in movimento, compreso quella nostra, come lo spopolamento delle isole minori, e nel caso specifico di Lampedusa c'è un aumento della popolazione, non c'è uno spopolamento. Però dico fondamentalmente, quando metteremo in fila i veri problemi sulle migrazioni, invece di trovare solo ed esclusivamente momenti per favorire una volta una cosa, una volta un'altra cosa, e lasciare poi il succo del discorso, che è il fenomeno del movimento delle persone, che vengono chiamate migrazioni, che viene quasi sempre messo da parte. Ecco, l'Europa deve avere uno scatto d'orgoglio per cercare di mettere al centro dell'attenzione il fenomeno dell'accoglienza, il fenomeno delle migrazioni, non solo quello dell'accoglienza. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor Martello, for this intervention. Again, highlighting the vision or the views of Lampedusa as being at the forefront of the migration phenomenon in its most delicate, I would say, aspects. You mentioned at some point the political problem, and I would like to ask you, what are your views when it comes to what we could refer to as the political gap? The fact that in Europe, migration is considered a very high matter on the political agenda, while the reality check is that when it comes to southern partners, for instance, it is understandably of a lesser importance matter because there are much more and other challenges to tackle. So how to bridge this gap, how to address it, and perhaps create the necessary common ground for cooperation in a concrete manner, which exists already, but to further enhance it in the spirit of renewed partnership.
Ma perché il fenomeno delle migrazioni viene visto solo ed esclusivamente dal punto di vista dell'appartenenza politica? Il fenomeno delle migrazioni, ognuno di noi si deve spogliare dall'appartenenza politica per cercare di parlare e affrontarlo seriamente, perché poi l'appartenenza politica porta all'autodifesa all'interno delle relative nazioni che ci sono in Europa. Cioè, quando si parla di populismo, le speculazioni che vengono fatte quotidianamente sul fenomeno delle migrazioni, noi dobbiamo rispondere come persone impegnate sul campo con altre motivazioni, ma siccome le nostre motivazioni sono molto più lunghe che di uno slogan, allora la gente percepisce più lo slogan, non le motivazioni e le giustificazioni che viene date dalle persone che hanno un po' di responsabilità istituzionale su questo grave fenomeno.
Thank you so much. The importance of depoliticizing the matter, or reducing the salience of perhaps migration in the political agenda would enable us to be a bit more clear of mind when we approach the whole issue, and less polarized indeed. I would like now to move back to our intervenants, some of our panelists, before I will open the floor to questions, and perhaps myself have the pleasure to ask a follow-up question. I would like to turn back to our first intervenant, the Mayor of Tunis, Ms. Abderrahim. With regard to the multi-level governance and multi-level approach of cooperation between cities and the national level, we know that Tunisia has established a national strategy on migration, that the strategy was reviewed some time ago, quite recently actually, and integrated the whole idea of the role of cities into this national strategy. So I would like to ask you a question on what would be your recommendations for multi-level governance to enable cities, to enable all stakeholders to engage further into action, and perhaps also to ask you a second question in relation to one of your program. I was informed about the Asima Tunis project and the impact this program you expect this program to have. You would have the floor. Thank you.
شكرا. نبدأ بمشروع تونس عاصمة. هو هذا المشروع هي ربما تونس كيف نريد لها أن تكون. هذا المشروع مدعم حول كيف نرى تونس، كيف يمكن لها أن تتطور في جميع المجالات، أي سياستها المحلية، سياستها العمرانية، المجالات التي يمكن أن نركز عليها. وبالتالي باعتبار أنه هذا المشروع موجود، تونس عاصمة وفيها كل الأطراف المتدخلة من أجل صياغة لصورة تونس المستقبلية، فربما ما يتدخلش في السياسات العامة للهجرة، ولكن هو يرسم بتونس كيف تكون. ولا نريد أن نفرق بين الأحياء السكنية، لا نريد أن نفرق أن يكون هنالك حي مثلا للمهاجرين، لا، هو لابد من الإدماج. ربما التركيز الثقافي والإبداعات الثقافية هي جسور التواصل ما بين أهالي البلاد وزوارها. فبالتالي نظرتنا المستقبلية لهذا المشروع هي في رسم المشهد العمراني المتكامل للمدينة، وكيف نريد لها أن تكون مدينة صحية، مدينة آمنة، مدينة سمارت بمعنى أنها تكون ذكية، وكيف نتوسع في رسم الملامح الكبرى للمدينة. فيما يخص كما قلت السياسات، سياسة الهجرة هي سياسات وطنية، وطالبنا بتشريك رؤساء البلديات خاصة في المناطق الحدودية في رسم هذه السياسات، خاصة وأنه المدن هي التي تواجه المشكلات اليومية والمصاعب اليومية، وهي التي عليها أن تقدم الخدمات للسكان دون اعتبار، معناها دون تمييز من هم السكان. فهذا علاش نطلب ومن هذا المنبر، وكنا طلبنا به سابقا، ضرورة تمكين المجالس البلدية وربما تشريكها في اتخاذ القرارات والمستقبلية، كيف تواجه المعضلات في حال كما تحدث السيد رئيس بلدية لامبدوسا في حالة ارتفاع العدد الوافدين، كيف تكون هنالك الإحاطة الصحية، خاصة كيف نضمن التعايش دون مشكلات ودون تصادم ما بين الوافدين وأصحاب المدينة. فبالتالي السياسات المحلية باعتبار قربنا هو فقط تقديم الخدمات، ونريد أن نرسم الخطوط العريضة الكبرى للسياسات الوطنية.
Thank you so much for this clarification. You talk about the importance of approaching the whole issue of migration as servicing whole citizens, be they nationals of the country or guests and foreigners of origin. It is about the fact that they live in the society, in the city where you are, where they are, and the city, for instance, that you manage and you govern as the mayor of Tunis. You also spoke about the importance of bringing together the mayors and the cities in Tunisia to to consolidate the voice of cities as a contributor to the national strategy and to the implementation of it, so to work together with the national authorities. That I think is a very important element, and in this regard I would like to then move back to the mayor of Sala, Ms. Gunnarsson, and to ask the mayor of Sala, what do you think that this gathering, this as vice president of UCLG Europe, this dynamic of cooperation among cities can function in an efficient manner with the national level, the national authorities, because it is, and we need to be honest, often a little bit of a challenge to determine who do we work with when it comes to cities, because there are much more cities than there are states, evidently, and international migration, international movement of people is primarily dealt with by, obviously, governments, national governments, but as we have highlighted repeatedly during this event and at multiple other occasions, cities are crucial partners. But for that, we need to find this dynamic of collective and consolidated voices with whom to be partners. So what would be your view? What would be your recommendation from your position as Vice President of UCLG Europe?
First of all, when we as local governments need to act in the forefront, especially to address the needs of those who don't enjoy the same rights as citizens as their native neighbors, we often find that outdated legislative frameworks hinder our work. So I think it's extremely important that we gather together, have these discussions to find the way forward. Because I think that if we cooperate among the local governments, both within the state, but also on an international level, then we can find the way forward. And I think we also need to highlight the importance of cooperation with the private sector and the civil society. And I think that together we can find these ways, this path forward. Sometimes I'm very curious about the reactions from the national level, because I can't really understand why not the national level can recognize the importance of the local and regional governments. We know that the local and regional governments do all the work when it comes to migration, but at the same time, we are not invited to the table with the national level to have these discussions. And we aren't invited to the table at an international level to have these discussions about migrations. But if we would like to find a successful way forward, we need to be invited to the table, not only as implementers of decisions made at national and international level, but as a part of the decision making, because we have all the experiences and we can share experiences among the local and regional governments all over the world. But then we need the national and the international level to take this into account when it comes to legislation and rules for the future.
Thank you so much for this. It's very, very pertinent point, actually. It's true that we very much often hear about the role of cities, the framework of cities at global level, even at continental level. And I will turn to my last member of the panels, who represents one of them. But we have much less visibility when it comes to the national level and how pragmatically and practically cities at national level do work concretely on the migration governance with the national authorities. So I would like to turn to my initial keynote speakers to close the loop, so to say, and to ask, in your views, Mayor Bianco, what do you think can the community, the Committee of the Region do as an institution to enable and to empower cities and regions, because it's also obviously the regions, to be more visible, more active, more engaged partners, not only in the migration realities, as often referred to today as implementers, but literally as full stakeholder of the overall migration governance cycle.
Grazie, grazie di cuore. Vorrei però rispondere anche ad alcune sollecitazioni, prima di rispondere a quest'ultima questione, che sono venute nel dibattito. Io vorrei raccontarvi che in Italia, grazie a una collaborazione tra l'Associazione Nazionale dei Comuni Italiani, del cui Consiglio Nazionale sono presidente, e il Ministero degli Affari Esteri, noi abbiamo avviato un rapporto di cooperazione bilaterale con comuni di altri paesi. In particolare, fra 10 giorni, io sarò a Siracusa, in Sicilia, dove saranno ospiti nostri 25 sindaci libici. 2 mesi fa sono stato a Tripoli, ho incontrato i colleghi sindaci con cui stiamo lavorando insieme. Ci sono 25 città italiane che hanno adottato ognuno una città libica su uno specifico argomento. La città di Palermo, per esempio, sta lavorando con la città di Misurata per aiutarli a realizzare un efficiente sistema di registrazione dei cittadini, di anagrafe. La città di Parma sta aiutando la città di Bengasi per dotarsi di un efficiente sistema di urbanistico, per realizzare un piano regolatore generale. E ognuna delle città libiche diventerà capofila in Libia per aiutare gli altri comuni su quello specifico argomento. Fra 10 giorni ci vedremo a Siracusa e continueremo questo accordo di cooperazione. Questo stesso rapporto noi l'abbiamo avuto l'anno prima di Covid, per la verità, con sindaci e amministratori locali del Kurdistan, tanto del Kurdistan iracheno quanto del Kurdistan siriano. In quella zona dove oggi, dove qualche anno fa c'era ISIS, oggi ci sono delle giovani sindache che amministrano il loro territorio e lo fanno anche grazie alla cooperazione bilaterale tra città, non cooperazione tra paesi, ma tra città. Questa può essere un utile strumento di collaborazione. Il sindaco di Lampedusa, Martello, che saluto con affetto e con amicizia e con gratitudine, ha sollevato una questione che è vera ed importante. E voglio ricordare che qualche anno fa c'era effettivamente un problema e siamo riusciti a realizzare dei corridoi di immigrazione legale. In Italia nel 2000 abbiamo realizzato una quota di ingresso, erano allora 200.000 persone, che sulla base delle valutazioni che venivano fatte sia dagli enti locali sia dalle forze economiche, si diceva che nel nostro paese 200.000 immigrati era quello di cui aveva bisogno l'Italia e si poteva fare con canali regolari. Quindi favorire dei canali regolari di migrazione significa scoraggiare dei canali irregolari. E infine vorrei dire l'accoglienza che dobbiamo porre in essere. Mi sto battendo per questo ed è uno dei punti qualificanti che abbiamo inserito nel programma e nelle decisioni del Comitato delle Regioni. L'accoglienza deve essere diffusa nel territorio e possibilmente in numeri non grandi. Stiamo affrontando questa questione per esempio adesso per i profughi afghani. Se noi mettiamo 1.000-2.000 persone in un unico campo e magari in un piccolo centro dove vivono meno persone, lo scontro, la reazione, la paura e anche le condizioni inumane rischiano di essere insopportabili. Se invece riusciamo a fare una accoglienza diffusa nel territorio in piccoli numeri, riusciamo a puntare sull'argomento decisivo che è quello della integrazione. Abbiamo visto che dove ci sono strutture che vanno in questa direzione con piccoli numeri, i risultati anche in termini di paure della popolazione locale sono molto molto meno gravi. il Comitato delle Regioni si sta impegnando attivamente in queste direzioni, soprattutto per consentire che le altre istituzioni comunitarie ascoltano meglio la voce di chi opera nel territorio, che è la voce della realtà. E io vorrei chiudere raccontandovi un episodio per farvi capire come molte volte le reazioni dell'opinione pubblica sono frutto di paure create in un modo inaccettabile. Nella mia città a un certo punto furono portate da seppellire nel cimitero i corpi di tante donne e bambini e anche di qualche uomo che non ce l'avevano fatta in un tentativo disperato. A me non riusciva possibile immaginare di mettere i corpi di queste persone in un sacco e di seppellirli tutti insieme in una fossa comune. Pensavo che avessero diritto queste persone, no? Almeno nel momento in cui avevano concluso la loro vita, un atteggiamento di rispetto. E ho fatto costruire dai ragazzi dell'Accademia delle Belle Arti una tomba monumentale nella mia città. E siccome non sapevamo i nomi di queste persone, ho deciso di mettere sulla tomba di ogni persona un verso di una bellissima poesia del primo premio Nobel per la poesia africano, che si chiama Wole Soyinka, che aveva scritto una poesia che si chiama Migranti. La poesia aveva tanti versi quanti erano esattamente i corpi che stavo andando a seppellire. E sul corpo di ogni persona, sulla salma, abbiamo messo un verso di quella poesia. I miei cittadini, vedendo che avevo realizzato una tomba così bella, si sono divisi. Una parte rumorosa di essi ha commentato e commentava: guarda il sindaco bianco, pensa, dicevano così, ai neri e non pensa a noi. Ma moltissime altre persone, mentre andavano al cimitero a portare un fiore alla tomba dei loro parenti, un fiore lo mettevano nella tomba dei migranti. E questa per me è il simbolo di come, affrontando con umanità questa questione, i risultati possono arrivare. Grazie della vostra attenzione.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for this complementary intervention and this very nice last note of your participation. I would like to now to give the floor to Marco, who I think has to announce that there are a couple of requests for intervention.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Mayor. Grazie, Sindaco Bianco, for introducing many of the things we'll be discussing over the next few days. This event will take place every day until Friday. You're all welcome to come physically in Brussels or to watch us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Clevercast, where many of the issues you discuss, gender, communication, even engagement with the private sectors, will be discussed here with some of the most influential figures in urban migration policy. As I said earlier, this is a hybrid event, so people are watching us on different platforms. And I'm quite thrilled to tell you that we have an intervention that has been booked from Hassan Al-Zhoul, who is the mayor of the Greater Al-Jaloun municipality, who is joining us right now live. So I'll ask the director to give him the floor.
على هذه الدعوة والشكر الموصول لمنظمي هذا المؤتمر. عندما نتحدث عن التهجير وعن المهجرين فلا بد أن نذكر أن هناك في السنوات السابقة كان هناك نزوح كبير جدا من الأراضي السورية باتجاه الأراضي الأردنية، وهذا ما شكل حقيقة عبء كبير على السلطات المحلية في المناطق الحدودية الملاصقة لدولة سوريا. يمكن كان أهم التحديات التي واجهتها هذه السلطات أنه كان هناك تزاحم المهجرين مع أبناء المجتمعات المحلية في موضوع سوق العمل وموضوع التعليم والصحة، وهذا كله سبب ضغط كبير على مجتمعاتنا المحلية. ولكن يعني هذه التحديات التي واجهتها السلطات المحلية كان لابد من اتخاذ إجراءات لتخفيف من وطأة اللجوء والنزوح على المهجرين السوريين اتجاه الأردن واتجاهات مجتمعاتنا المحلية. نحن في سلطة محلية قمنا باستشارة المهجرين بشأن المشاكل والتحديات التي تواجهها التنمية الاقتصادية المحلية ومشاركة المهجرين في هذه النتائج. كان أيضا لابد من خلق هناك بعض المجموعات والمنظمات من اللاجئين لتسهيل عملية الإدماج والشراكة مع المجتمعات المحلية. يمكن كانت هذه التحديات التي نحن سعينا جاهدين إلى أن نجعل منها فرص اتجاه مجتمعاتنا المحلية، وكان ذلك من خلال الاستفادة من المهارات التي دخلت إلى مجتمعاتنا من قبل المهجرين السوريين، كانت مهارات البناء أو مهارات حتى في مجال الطبخ والمهارات في مجال التعليم وما إلى ذلك. تكوننا شراكات مع هؤلاء المهجرين في موضوع العمل المتناسق مع أبناء المجتمع المحلي. يعني إحنا نظرتنا لشراكات الدول حول المتوسط أن تكون شراكات متجددة وطرق جديدة من أجل التعاون في المنطقة وخلق فرص استثمار أكثر لتذليل الصعوبات على توفير الصعوبات التي تواجه المهجرين في الحصول على حياة كريمة لهم ولعائلاتهم وتوفير الأمن المجتمعي للسكان المحليين. يعني لا أريد أن أطيل، ولكن موضوع المهجرين في الأردن والأعداد الكبيرة التي دخلت بوقت زمني قياسي، يمكن وصلت في بعض الأماكن إلى أكثر من 25% من نسبة السكان المحليين، هذا كله يعني كان له دور في تضافر الجهود السلطات المحلية والتعاون ما بين المجالس البلدية في بعض المحافظات من أجل توجيه المنظمات الداعمة، منظمات المجتمع المحلي والمنظمات الخارجية، توجيه الدعم والأموال التي تقدم في الأماكن المناسبة وفي الأوقات المناسبة. يمكن كان عتبنا على السلطات المحلية المركزية عدم إشراك المجالس البلدية بشكل أكبر في تحديد السياسات اتجاه الأخوة السوريين المهجرين، ولكن مع مرور الوقت استطعنا كمجالس بلدية أن نثبت بأن أهل مكة أدرى بشعابها، وأن نحن أبناء المجتمعات المحلية نحن القادرين على صنع التغيير والمواءمة بين المهجرين والمجتمعات المحلية. لابد من الذكر أخيرا أن التعاون بين دول المتوسط في مجال الهجرة له أهمية كبيرة في نقل الخبرات والاستفادة من تجارب الآخرين وتنسيق الجهود وتوجيهها في إدارة الأزمات المتزايدة في إدارة الهجرة. شكرا لكم جميعا، وشكرا على هذه المعلومات الطيبة الهائلة التي استمعنا إليها خلال هذا المؤتمر. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for being always so active with all the MC2CM activities. The Mayor is always a fervent attendee of our events. And actually, we got a question from the Clevercast directly for Mayor Bianco. Mayor, you referred in your intervention to a research done by some Italian municipalities that shows how quotas for legal migration with the participation of cities can help reducing irregular migration. Can you tell us more about that? Can you tell us more about this initiative and why do you think this is important today?
Per una ragione molto semplice, perché se noi andiamo a guardare che cos'è il tasso di natalità nei paesi europei, compreso l'Italia, ci rendiamo conto che è un tasso di natalità molto basso e che l'età media della popolazione sta crescendo e che ci sono molti posti di lavoro che non riusciamo a riempire di professionalità nel nostro paese. D'altro canto ci sono paesi da cui persone disperate ricercano un futuro per i loro ragazzi. Allora, se noi questa domanda e questa offerta la facciamo incrociare in un modo regolare, non si creano quei problemi drammatici che si creano quando il rapporto di migrazione è affidato a bande di criminali. Allora, in Italia, alla fine degli anni 90, 20 anni fa, e all'inizio del 2000, Avevamo il primo ministro italiano che realizzò questa cosa era il ministro dell'interno Giorgio Napolitano, che poi divenne Presidente della Repubblica, inventò la quota delle immigrazioni regolari, sulla base di una valutazione attenta che veniva fatta dalle regioni, dalle città, ma anche dalle organizzazioni imprenditoriali del mondo del lavoro. Si fissava una quota di persone che potevano entrare regolarmente nel nostro paese con una condizione anche di integrazione sufficiente e necessaria. La cosa ha funzionato e naturalmente, come spesso capita, per un periodo poi è stata abbandonata. Questo ha fatto sì che per anni l'unico modo di entrare nel nostro paese, ma in generale in Europa, fosse un modo irregolare, o attraversando il Mediterraneo, dopo magari attraversato molti altri paesi, o per la linea slava o per altri canali, e questo ha determinato problemi. Quindi l'idea di ripristinare flussi di immigrazione reale e controllata è un modo anche, tra le altre cose, per combattere quella illegale. Spero di essere stato chiaro.
Certo. Sorry. Of course, sorry, my Italian-English dilemma sometimes comes up when I'm on the microphone. I would like to mention that it was a PhD student from Utrecht that is doing a PhD exactly on the relation between refugees and cities that asked this question. So thank you for following us on all these online platforms. I'd also like to say that the participants in presence have the opportunity to ask questions to Mayor Bianco or the other panelists simply by going to the microphone that is placed at the end of the stage. Another question that came up is about the role of cities in migration governance. This is all about, the MC2CM Days are all about positioning cities, creating dialogue between different levels of governance. Usually it's countries, governments that produce policies for migration, and then cities are the first responders, and sometimes they face way greater challenges that cannot be identified sometimes at the national level. Mayor Bianco, what would be one message, your recommendation that you would give today to improve the dialogue between cities, also at the regional level? Here we are debating the Euro-Mediterranean region, to have a stronger voice in migration governance.
Una cosa molto importante secondo me è far sì che è evidente che la decisione deve essere assunta dai governi nazionali e dalla Unione Europea, però ascoltare nel formare la decisione preventivamente l'esperienza, la sensibilità, i problemi di chi governa le città e di chi governa le regioni è molto importante. Per questo io credo che su alcune questioni, come quello per esempio della migrazione, il parere del Comitato delle Regioni non deve essere acquisito come un parere formale, ma deve essere un modo per ascoltare concretamente con quali strumenti si può migliorare le modalità di affrontare il problema. E quindi ascoltare il Comitato delle Regioni, ascoltare la voce delle città, significa dare concretezza a dei programmi assunti in questa materia. Poi c'è quell'altro aspetto a cui avevo accennato, la cooperazione bilaterale anche tra comuni e tra regioni. Ho raccontato l'esempio della Libia. Adesso per esempio noi stiamo aiutando in Libia l'unico organismo eletto democraticamente sono i comuni, che oggi eleggono i sindaci nel Consiglio comunale. Noi stiamo aiutando i libici a darsi una associazione dei comuni libici per poter contare di più anche in quel paese e per affrontare meglio le questioni che riguardano la loro realtà. Quindi cooperazione bilaterale è uno strumento che può aggiungersi e dare risposte concrete a temi concreti.
Thank you for introducing this, and let me announce that on Thursday at our session on migration narratives there will be representatives from the city of Tripoli. So thank you for introducing this particular type of cooperation that is working quite well. Julien, il y a aussi online, je viens de recevoir une question directe pour Madame la maire de Tunis. Madame la maire, est-ce que vous êtes avec nous? Je viens de recevoir une question pour vous. Donc, la question est la suivante. Vous êtes en train de collaborer avec la diaspora tunisienne, qui se trouve bien sûr à l'étranger, dans la question de la gouvernance migratoire au niveau des villes. Pourriez-vous nous dire quelque chose en plus par rapport à cette initiative ?
شكرا. هي بالشراكة مع المجتمع المدني والجمعيات المتخصصة في هذا الشأن نقوم بمبادرات، نتعاون معا، نتحاور في كيف نمد جسور التواصل ما بين سكان العاصمة وما بين المهاجرين خارج مدينة تونس. هنالك العديد من الجمعيات التي تقوم حتى ببعض المشاريع الرمزية والتي من خلالها نربط هذا التواصل. نعمل كذلك على التبادل الثقافي، تحية تظاهرات ثقافية قمنا بهذا في تونس مع بعض السفارات أو ممثلي السفارات الأجنبية في تونس لتشريك الجالية الأجنبية مع التونسيين والتونسيات في تظاهرات ثقافية بشرح بورقيبة بالعاصمة خلال تظاهرة أحد بلا سيارات، بمعنى أنه البلدية تفتح أبوابها إلى كل المبادرات الثقافية والتي من شأنها أن تدمج المبادرات وأن تدمج هذه الشعوب فيما بينها. كما قلت، لأنه تلاقي الحضارات هو من شأنه أن يغذي الثقافة ومن شأنه أن يغذي ثقافة التعايش والتقارب فيما بيننا.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Julian, I can tell everybody that we have a few, over 100 people watching this online. It's been certainly very interesting, very enriching. A lot of knowledge has been shared. I'll just check quickly with the direction if we can actually get Director Diakité online. For the time, that does not seem to be possible, but we'll continue for some closing remarks, and I'll pass the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Marco, and thank you for relaying this interesting intervention. Glad to hear about the number of people who are following us online. I would like to react to a very interesting point that was raised, or example that was raised by Mayor Bianco when it comes to this example of twinning programs between Italian cities and Libyan cities. And I think that, as we have discussed over the years, and particularly recently, we see the role of cities being fully acknowledged. When I introduced the panel, I highlighted the fact that research has been done, that the facts are here, the acknowledged role is embraced, the dialogues are existing, the frameworks, and so on and so forth, and now it is about how can we move on and go into action. However, I would like to bring it back to the whole question of the political gap between Europe and the Southern partners, and to try to flag one potential concern that we have seen in the field of migration, when migration became an increasingly more or higher of a higher importance point in the overall European agenda, that there has been a significant engagement from the European side to further cooperate, to further engage with partners, and sometimes it can become overwhelming. What we often refer to the cooperation absorption capacity of the partners and the challenge that it can represent. So how can we avoid this kind of situation with cities where there might be a number of stakeholders, be it at city level, international organization, various types of civil society, national level support, European Union funding, and so on and so forth, which might create quite a significant pressure in stakeholders which are crucial, but perhaps do not have yet the necessary capacities to actually absorb all these expectations which would emerge from engaging into international cooperation on such a highly sensitive issue as migration, where often there will be some expectations which need to lead to results at shorter, medium, and longer term. So what would be your view, Mr. Mayor Bianco, in this regard? Thank you.
Io credo che sia molto importante che ci sia la possibilità di aiutare queste comunità e queste istituzioni in un percorso di crescita e di efficienza. Vi ho citato poco fa l'esempio di una cooperazione bilaterale tra alcune città italiane e alcune città del Kurdistan. In particolare io sono stato a Erbil più volte e ho visto concretamente come la situazione in quella città, nel campo in cui c'era una collaborazione con alcune città del centro Italia, era migliorata. Era indispensabile però assistere i quadri dirigenti, la burocrazia, ma anche gli amministratori di quella città per essere all'altezza della sfida. Quindi non basta firmare un protocollo e non basta dare delle risorse. Forse diamo meno risorse finanziarie e più aiuto concreto, e cioè formiamo le persone. Abbiamo, per esempio, in alcune città realizzato una rete informatica efficiente e abbiamo formato i funzionari iracheni, curdo-iracheni, che lavoravano concretamente. Quindi lei ha ragione, non ci mettiamo a posto con la coscienza dando delle risorse finanziarie. Dobbiamo essere concreti e operativi e aiutarli con processi di formazione e di cooperazione che devono durare negli anni. Adesso questa esperienza che stiamo per fare con la Libia sarà di grande interesse con le città libiche, perché c'è una scommessa importante. La Libia è un paese di una grande precarietà. Decidere di puntare sui sindaci e sul governo locale. Io ho fatto una bellissima passeggiata nel cuore di Tripoli con il neo sindaco di Tripoli e ho visto una città quasi bombardata, che esce da una condizione drammatica, però ho visto già che c'era un filo di speranza e ho visto il dialogo tra il sindaco e i cittadini. Mi sembrava quello di una moderna città europea. Veniva riposta fiducia. Come aiutarli? Concretamente. Aiutando, per esempio, a ricostruire una bellissima galleria che è nel centro di Tripoli, che oggi è distrutta, quasi bombardata, e che può diventare un centro dove sviluppare attività di tipo culturale. Questo è il senso della sua domanda e questo è il senso della mia risposta. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to ask the same question in few words, perhaps as concluding remark from both Mayor Gunnarsson and Abderrahim with regard to this, how to avoid basically the potential obstacle, the potential challenge that we might face in evolving from acknowledging the role of cities to fully engaging with cities and perhaps underestimating the importance of delivering on concrete support so as to strengthen the capacities of cities in modernizing and professionalizing so as to be able to absorb this international cooperation and expectations which come along with it. Perhaps we should start with Mayor Gunnarsson and then move on to Mayor Abderrahim.
Thank you very much. I would like to highlight the importance of the national associations of local and regional governments, because I think that the national associations can play a crucial role helping establishing network, sharing experiences, but also have some sort of education and support to their members. And at the same time, I also would like to highlight the importance of the international organization, for example, UCLG, because I think that we can spread a lot of information, but we can also spread experiences that is very useful for me as a mayor at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Abderrahim. I will be moving on to close this panel and to move towards the closing remarks that we will have. The idea of this last question was to create this bridge with our last interventions, being from Mr. Johannes Luschner, Deputy Director General of the Directorate for Migration and Home Affairs at the European Commission, who represents the donor side and represent the institution, the EU, which makes sense and coherence and ensure coordination of our approach in this regard, but also Ralf Genexke, who will intervene afterwards, who is our Director and Head of the Brussels mission, representing an international actor, ICMPD, in regard to these potential challenges which could emerge in further supporting cities in becoming true actors in the whole migration governance cycle. Mr. Luschner, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Now, as you know, I work for the European Commission, and one of the challenges we face is actually to make the direct link with cities and regions. Fortunately, we have the Committee of the Regions, and fortunately, we have events like this to connect with those who actually do migration. It's not the supranational or national level, it is cities and the regions that do migration, and therefore the local migration, the local dimension of migration is key. I also see here, and this is something that I observe always in conversations with mayors, that the approach to migration is far less fearful and far more practical and positive than it is in other more abstract debates. Now, we face a common challenge, which is equal access to rights and basic services for all, including migrants and refugees. In the Mediterranean region, this is, I would say, made complicated or exacerbated by the complex reality of mixed migration flows. But it is clear that national and local governments need to work together, be it in the Mediterranean region, be it in the European Union. Only through an integrated approach and through multi-level governance mechanism, and I don't particularly like this word, but basically saying a structure that allows us to work together and to understand the challenges of each level of governance, can we make then better migration policy a reality. We had France organized recently in mid-September a thematic meeting on national and local authorities under the label of the Rabat process, which for me was a concrete example of how local authorities from partner countries can also be involved and should be involved in regional migration dialogues. The Commission's contribution, apart from making sure that we consult regional and city representatives whenever we propose legislation, the proposal is relatively humble from the Home Affairs side, but we have, through a financing facility called Migration Partnership Facility, tried to finance innovative pilot projects. One that offers, for instance, traineeship opportunities to young Moroccans and Tunisians in northern Italy, but also another one where we facilitate mobility between Andalusia and northern Morocco to provide networking opportunities and professional qualification to selected Moroccan candidates in the renewable energy and green economy sector. We have in the Pact of Migration also presented the concept of talent partnerships, where we want to do more of these things, and in particular as they relate to circular migration. And I can only agree, and the Pact says that very clearly, to what some here have mentioned, that if we want to manage better and reduce irregular migration, we need to open regular migration channels and opportunities, and the talent partnerships are one way of doing that. Now, I would say the subject where the regional and the local level are the most important, of course, is integration. The European Commission launched in November last year a new action plan on integration and inclusion. And that action plan has a strong focus on supporting local communities. As I said, also in the field of integration, we have established an excellent cooperation with the Committee of the Regions. We will launch, starting from next year, new initiative to empower local communities through capacity building for local and regional authorities, to involve local communities in the design and in the implementation of integration measures. We want to finance projects to promote volunteering actions, co-designed also by migrants and host communities. And of course, that was mentioned here as well several times, we want to promote mentoring programs between and among local communities and newly arrived migrants. If the health situation permits, we would also like to launch in 2022 a new and a stronger version of our Urban Academy for Integration program, which is a training program and a capacity building program for policymakers and practitioners. We have run this program already successfully for 2 years with the participation of almost 100 cities and regions in the EU to make their work on integration more effective. Now, turning again to the Mediterranean, of course, migration management, mobility management, and in all their different aspects will remain a key objective of our cooperation with the Mediterranean neighborhood, if you will. And the joint communication on the renewed partnership with the Southern Neighbourhood, which was adopted by the Commission in February of these years, also outlines detailed areas of cooperation with local and regional authorities, such as human development, cooperation on youth, on education, on skills, but also on digital development, climate change, and the circular economy. We are with all the countries of the Southern Mediterranean in a dialogue, and with some of them more advanced than with others. And we are, of course, first and foremost talking to national governments, but particularly when it comes to talent partnerships, we want to then break through also to the regional and local level in countries such as Morocco and Tunisia, for instance, in order to promote talent partnerships and to allow for a win-win situation, I would say, in particular when it comes to circular migration. In conclusion, I think this seminar has shown again that there is a huge potential for initiatives that bring together the national, the city, and the regional level, that bring together the private sector and the people who are engaged in managing migration and integration. And it is only together with you, only together with cities and regions, that we will be able to master that challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General Lufner. I will now give the floor to Ralf Genetske for the closing remarks.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Julien, distinguished colleagues, distinguished participants. Yeah. Well, first, a word of regret that I can't be with you, even if a hybrid meeting would have been nice to be on the other side of the screen, in the room which we have here in Brussels. But yeah, it's still a great pleasure as the director of the Brussels office of ICMPD to have this meeting hosted in Brussels, because I think it is definitely important. And let me say right from the beginning that I'm delighted. And I'm delighted, first of all, for a very personal reason, because it is about 20 years ago that I was for a few years actually working on a city partnership program. At that time, it was between cities in the European Union and the former Soviet Union, but was exactly on all the topics which fall under urban management, from energy to wastewater to cadastre management Not so much migration, but it was an excellent time. I learned so many things, met so many people, and I see many of these things now actually very much present in the discussions we are having. So each time when it comes to city cooperation, I'm delighted to see that. But I'm also delighted, and I think that is really linked to what my colleague Julien pointed out, sort of at which stage are we? Acknowledging the roles of cities, or are we a stage beyond? Sort of the stage beyond is definitely sort of action. And I do remember still the discussions was before 2015, at the European Union level on new, on what is called the communications of what was back then the global approach to migration and mobility, but very, very long discussions just to have one sentence acknowledging the role of cities in a document by the European Commission. And that's not well, before 2015, it's less than 10 years ago. And I have very lively memories of that because I just was puzzled at that time to see the resistance, to have just the fact acknowledged that cities play a pivotal role, a crucial role when it comes to migration management, migration governance. And I think when I'm listening to the debate, but also I'm very grateful also for the overview from the European Commission right now, where we clearly see, I think, that we are beyond the stage only of acknowledging the roles, but also giving the roles from a donor perspective, but also from all the various stakeholders which are involved, what we have been discussing, a very active role, which is the natural role, belongs to the cities when it comes to migration governance. And clearly from an ICMPD perspective, that is where we put the emphasis on. It has been outlined and underlined by many speakers this morning, the stakeholders from the civil society, the regional level, the national level, the international level. ICMPD is an international organization focused on migration issues. So when we work with cities, for us it's natural to think immediately also, oh, how does that relate to the national level, to the regional level? How can we bring that into other fora? The Rabat process as a migration dialogue between states was mentioned. And I also saw that last week, the meeting with a focus on cities. I was delighted also here to see that. The same we are doing, and we are having the discussions with colleagues working on the Eastern Neighbourhood, where there also migration dialogues exist, to see which level of dialogue and focus we can have at the city level. So this is, when we work then as an international organization with a national level, with national governments, we are trying to put in the ideas to see, national competence, but where do we have the effects? That's at city level. Don't we need within the country further cooperation? And we are trying, or can then try to initiate these processes at national level. So in the end, even though it's sort of this always, we speak, put sophisticated words on these things of migration governance, or as Johannes Luchner said, multi-level governance and so on. But it is, I think, when we want to deal with the phenomenon of migration, a very necessary processes, again, where the cities have a pivotal role. But I think also going beyond the acknowledging, and just to underline that again, there are instruments by now, and also we are in Brussels to underline. So the EU instruments, Johannes Luchner mentioned one where also ICMPD is involved, which is called the Migration Partnership Facility, where among certain pilot projects on legal migration have actually a focus and were initiated by cities to work on legal migration and mobility. But also from an ICMPD side, we have now a lot of experience when it comes, not to some extent the Mediterranean, Turkey, integration of Syrians in the Turkish context, where we have a large-scale program funded by the European Union focusing on integration of Syrians, which can then be done in various ways, and which involves actually a lot of money to persons, but to businesses, to federations, and so on. So I think the examples is there. I think from the various mayors, also very interesting. Also what was underlined the role of networks, associations at national level, but then we have our partners, of course, at the global level being part of this program. And I think, I think I can only hope that these efforts can continue. I think support and also financial support is always a crucial issue. It's not the only one, but so that's why we are definitely, as ICMPD and with our partners, I think it's fair to say, very grateful to the commitment by the European Union to this program. I think that was also expressed already this morning when we had the Commissioner Vaheli with us. Now we have the Deputy Director General from DG Home with us. And so, yeah, we are hoping for many more years to come of cooperation, which can be supported by the various partners. But I think, and to end then this session, I think the good thing is that this is only the start of the week, and there is actually, many more opportunities to exchange and to discuss the various issues throughout this week with the colleagues, in a hybrid way, which is not as nice as sitting together, but it allows to reach out to people around the Mediterranean, but also even further than the Mediterranean. With that, many thanks to everyone, and back to my colleague Julia.
Thank you very much, Ralph. It is only the beginning of the new agenda for the Mediterranean, was indicating Commissioner Vaheli. It is only the beginning of this MC2CM Days, and it is only the beginning of the next phase of engagement and cooperation that we are all looking forward to. I would like to thank you so much, Ralph. Deputy Director General Luchner, thank you so much for these closing remarks. The members of the panel, some of them had to leave us, obviously, but I'm very grateful for the participation of the mayors, Abderrahim, Gunnarsson, Martello, and Mayor Bianco, who stayed with me all this time here. Even though we are hybrid, even though there are people here, I felt a little bit lonely, so thank you so much for being present. And obviously, thank you for the opening remarks of Commissioner Vaheli, our Director General, Mr. Michael Spindeliger, Emilia Says, the Secretary General of UCLG. Thanks so much, everyone, and a special thanks, I would say, for this specific event to the Committee of the Region for its patronage. It is very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Marco, the floor is yours.
Thank you all for being here. You can be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. for another session, this time about inclusive citizenships and cities in the Euro-Mediterranean region. You can stay tuned, you can re-watch this on all our platforms. And I hope I'll see some of you tomorrow. Stay tuned. #MC2CM Days. Thank you very much.